Welcome to the clinical cookout.
Sigmund Freud is the psychoanalyst most responsible for the development of ego psychology. Originally, Freud used the word ego to mean the sense of self, but later he expanded it to also include the psychic functions of judgment, tolerance, reality testing, control, planning, defense, synthesis of information, intellectual functioning, and memory. The ego is the organizing principle upon which thoughts and interpretations of the world are based. The ego represents what may be called reason and common sense. According to Freud, the ego is one of three distinct interacting agents in the psychic apparatus, defined as the structural model of our psyche. The three agents are the id, ego, and superego. The id is our basic primal urges, and the superego is the critical and moralizing agent. Our ego is the part of our personality that mediates the demands of the id, the superego, and reality. In layman's terms, the ego is meant to control the demands of our basic primal urges, and the superego is the moralistic part of the personality that forms later in childhood due to our upbringing and social influence. It's the ego's job to strike a balance between these two often competing forces and to ensure that fulfilling our primal needs and our moralistic value conforms to the demands of reality. Our ego relies on defense mechanisms to protect us against anxiety and distress. A defense mechanism is an unconscious psychological operation that functions to protect us from anxiety producing thoughts and feelings related to internal conflicts and external stressors. Some of these defense mechanisms include denial, displacement, intellectualization, fantasy, compensation, projection, rationalization, reaction formation, regression, repression, and sublimation. In everyday usage, the ego represents a sense of self importance. For example, he or she has a big ego. Having a healthy ego means we can maintain a healthy sense of self, but an imbalance can lead to problems, including excessive self centeredness. It is not possible to totally eliminate our ego, nor is it desirable. We need our ego in order to maintain self confidence, assertiveness, and self esteem. However, when someone says that a person has a big ego, it implies that the person is conceited or has an exaggerated sense of self importance. Sometimes, this inflated sense of ego might be connected to a mental health condition. For example, narcissistic personality disorder is a condition that involves having a grandiose sense of importance, self centeredness, and a lack of empathy for others. It is, however, important to note that narcissism is not the same as egocentrism. Egocentrism refers to self centeredness and an inability to consider the perspective of other people. And this is very common in childhood and is actually developmentally appropriate. But it can also occur throughout life to varying degrees. However, narcissism and egocentrism are not precisely the same. 6 signs that your ego may be controlling you or may be inflated are as follows. 1. You always have to be right. 2. You always want more. Nothing is ever enough. No amount of success, no amount of things, no amount of love. You always want more. 3. You only focus on yourself. 4. You don't like when others succeed. 5. You set unrealistic goals. And 6. You lack empathy. Oftentimes, it is very difficult for us to be aware of these 6 signs. However, other people in our lives can certainly see them. Individuals with an inflated ego may appear confident and self assured and act as if nothing bothers them. They are always able to see the silver lining. They do not deal with the internal struggles that others seem to deal with. You may even often hear them say, "Well, that does not bother me. That's not something I deal with." But their behavior may be driven by a need to prove their worth or mask their insecurities. In these cases, ego driven behavior may be a coping mechanism to protect the individual from the anxiety and self doubt associated with imposter syndrome. Keeping our ego in check requires growth in self awareness. We have to be able to look into a mirror and see ourselves for ourselves in order to understand our ego.
Hold the key out.